This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Death toll rises to at least 205 as shells pound Tripoli. President Kiir offering to mediate Sudan's political transition. Ugandan court set to rule on presidential age limit. Hello and welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, alongside my colleague Uche Okoronkwo, who has our business headlines. Uche?
Thank you, Richard. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Rival tobacco manufacturers feud in South Africa over illegal cigarette trade. And Kenya's biggest lender, KCB, acquires state-owned National Bank through a share swap deal. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it's back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Uche. We begin in Libya, and as the siege on Tripoli continues, the World Health Organization now says the number of people killed has risen to at least 205. 18 are civilians. The revelation comes as shells continue hitting several parts of Tripoli. Meanwhile, an armed group believed to be allied to the government have attacked an airbase run by Khalifa Haftar. The Eastern Commander's forces have been battling with troops backing the internationally backed government of Fayez al-Sarraj. Well, according to the UN, Tripoli has witnessed the heaviest fighting since the outbreak of clashes with indiscriminate rocket fire on a high-density neighborhood in the Libyan capital. For the past 2 weeks, General Khalifa Haftar's LNA troops have been advancing towards Tripoli. Fighting broke the world record for the highest number of displacements in one day. 4,500 people were displaced, bringing the total to 25,000.
We can report that throughout the night, Tripoli witnessed the heaviest fighting since the outbreak of the clashes with indiscriminate rocket fire on a high-density neighborhood in the Libyan capital. At least 5 civilians have been reportedly killed and several others injured. The Secretary General's Special Representative in Libya, Ghassan Salameh, condemned in the strongest terms the overnight shelling, recalling that responsibility for actions that may constitute war crimes now lies not only with the individuals who committed the indiscriminate attacks, but also potentially with those who ordered them.
All right, for more on this, we speak to our correspondent Guy Henderson in Benghazi in the eastern part of Libya, where Commander Haftar's forces are based. Guy, thank you for taking time out to join us here on Africa Live. Let's get straight into it. First things first, some 205 people have been killed, including 18 civilians, 913 wounded in 2 weeks of fighting near the Libyan capital of Tripoli. Please tell us, what is the latest?
Well, I want to start in the south of Libya. We had reports of attack on an LNA, that is the Haftar forces airbase in the south just a few hours ago. We can now confirm that. We've spoken to the commander of the LNA who was in charge of protecting that base. We spoke to him on the phone. He said he was injured in that attack. He said that 2 LNA soldiers were killed in that attack, 4 people were injured, and then another 4 of the attacking forces were captured. Now it gets a little bit more interesting from here because the LNA accuse a mixed government of national accord force of conducting this attack. That was their words. Very hard to independently verify, of course, because there have been all these claims and counterclaims. But one of the people they named of being involved in this attack or being ultimately responsible was a man named Ibrahim Jadran. Now, Ibrahim Jadran is known throughout Libya, and the reason for that, you might remember this event back in 2013. He was the man who hijacked an oil tanker in Libya and tried to start exporting oil while skirting around the central government, so without central government authority. And at that point, the United States had taken a military decision to step in, seize back control of that oil ship, to make sure that it was only the central government that was able to import and export oil, because of course this is a country that is heavily reliant on those oil revenues. So an interesting development there. If that is confirmed, that would of course mean that he had now essentially swapped sides and was now fighting on behalf of the UN-backed government out of Tripoli. It obviously also asks questions about, yes, Haftar has taken all this territory, but is all of that territory secure? There is, a lawless area of land in the south of Libya. In the past few days, we also understand that the LNA has deployed forces to 2 oil ports. So questions, of course, about the stability, if you like, of Haftar's gains.
All right, Guy Henderson in Benghazi, thanks for keeping a close eye on that story. It's something that we will surely be covering and following here on Africa Live. Moving on, in neighboring Sudan, protesters have been marking 1 week after long-time ruler Omar al-Bashir was ousted, and they are doing it by staging more protests outside the military headquarters, calling on the army to hand over to a civilian government.
Days ago, Omar al-Bashir was the Sudanese president. Now he is gone after the military ousted him. But protests continue. As protesters celebrate their achievement, they insist that the job is not fully accomplished.
We are protesting to achieve all our demands. To do so, we have to protest, because without protesting, our demands will not be met, since the only weapon we have is this sit-in. Therefore, I call on all the people to maintain the protests until we achieve all this revolution's demands.
As a Sudanese citizen, I ask the armed forces to prosecute the corrupt members of the so-called National Salvation Government. We wish to see Omar al-Bashir and all the corrupt behind bars now. They insist that the military must hand over power to a civilian government.
Our demands did not only include the persecution of Omar al-Bashir, but also claiming the rights of our martyrs. Until now, we have not seen a civil government, and no one mentioned how they will give the martyrs their rights. Their blood should not go to waste.
The military council is making decisions now. This means that the military council is now a government that makes decisions to fire and appoint. That means another military rule.
2 brothers of al-Bashir have been arrested. The former president was recently moved from house arrest to the Koba maximum security prison in the capital, Khartoum. Mohammed Abubakar, CGTN.
South Sudan's President Salva Kiir is offering to mediate political transition in Sudan. This after ousted Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir was reportedly transferred to a high-security prison in Khartoum. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports from South Sudan's capital, Juba.
South Sudan's government has sent a delegation to Khartoum to meet with the Transitional Military Council on the agenda, Sudan's current political situation and a way forward. Sudan's former President Omar al-Bashir helped broker a peace deal for South Sudan last year. Sudan is also a guarantor of that peace agreement. South Sudan says it stands with the people of Sudan.
The President supports a transition where the rights of the Sudanese people and their democratic aspirations are protected and guaranteed, and shall therefore call for more open, inclusive, and smooth transition that bring on board even the armed opposition from the Darfur, Kordofan, and Blue Nile regions.
Juba says it has received assurances from Sudan's Transitional Military Council that South Sudan's oil will continue to flow to Port Sudan, then to the international market. South Sudan's airspace is also still controlled from Khartoum after it seceded from Sudan in 2011. Juba is urging the Sudanese people to ensure that a transition leads to a permanent peace in the country and the East African region as a whole. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Let's go to Uganda now, where the Supreme Court has upheld the removal of the age cap for presidency. Parliament last year approved the removal of the 75-year age limit. The ruling from the Constitutional Court means that 74-year-old President Yoweri Museveni can seek re-election in 2021. 4 judges in Uganda's top court voted in favor of the ruling from the Constitutional Court on making amendments to the Constitution. Critics say this latest move opens up the possibility of a life presidency for Museveni, who has been in power for over 3 decades. Well, CGTN's Isabel Nakiria joins us from Kampala to update us on this story. Well, Nakiria, Isabel, we understand that the first 2 judges of the Supreme Court differed on presidential age removal. What is the latest from Uganda?
Actually, 3 judges differed on the ruling of the Constitutional Court, and they based most of their reasoning on the violence that marred the proceedings of the House at that time during the debate of the amendment of the age limit. As you may recall, during that time, the opposition minority politicians tried to put up stiff resistance to have not to have the constitution amended. And during that time, we saw soldiers storm the house, and there was a fist fight between the soldiers and the members of the opposition, and of course, violence marred that proceeding. So. Basing on that, the judges deferred, saying that the speaker hastily introduced the bill onto the order paper, and she had no authority to do that. She does not determine what goes onto the order paper. And of course, they also say that the presence of soldiers into the parliament was unconstitutional. And of course, some members of parliament were blocked from the house. They were suspended, and of course, that in a way affected the voting process. Their votes did not count. And so those were some of the reasons that the 3 judges that deferred chose.
Isabel, let's talk a bit more about this. The decision at the Supreme Court will today decide President Yoweri Museveni's fate on whether he will be eligible or not to run for presidency again in 2021. What does this decision mean for the president and the Ugandan people?
This decision simply means that President Museveni is here to stay. He is going to run for a 6th term, and of course in 2021 he will be above 75 years of age. And of course, now that the Supreme Court has upheld the constitutional decision to amend the age limit of 75 years, that means that President Museveni will run again. And we've also seen before his party, the ruling National Resistance Party that forms the majority in Parliament, already endorsed him as the sole candidate to run in 2021. So that simply means that President Museveni could stay in Uganda as president for life. And of course that makes many people here very uncomfortable with that decision.
Well, I was just about to ask you, did I hear you correctly when you said President Yoweri Museveni is here to stay? And again, what are the Ugandan people actually saying about this? Elaborate.
Well, we spoke to a few people after that ruling was made, and many of them who were, of course, the opposition members who took the appeal to the Supreme Court when they were uncomfortable with the ruling of the Constitutional Court, say that the fact that his party already endorsed him as the sole candidate to run for 2021, that means that Ugandans may not see another president again. And of course, that makes the Constitution look like it can be played around with at any time. So, but there were a lot of hopes in the beginning by them when they thought that when 3 judges, of course, deferred. So they think that it's not only some Ugandans that are uncomfortable with President Museveni staying for life, but even some judges can see that a president ruling for over 75 years of age is is not very comfortable a thing to happen in this country, especially at such a time when African presidents are being, overthrown by their armies.
Excellent reporting, Isabel Nakiria. We thank you for that report. We appreciate you. All right, you are watching CGTN. We have more news after the break. Here's a look at what's ahead. Ethiopian Parliament approves new ministerial appointments. UN delegation visits South Sudan's Equatoria in push to end ongoing fighting.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back, everyone. Authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo say 13 people have died and more than 100 are missing after a boat capsized on Lake Kivu in eastern DRC this week. Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi visited the scene and declared a national day of mourning. He promised to prevent such tragedies from ever happening again. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa has more from Kinshasa.
Congolese officials say they have rescued 37 people from the boat that capsized on Monday evening. 13 passengers have been confirmed dead. There have been conflicting reports of the number of passengers on board the ill-fated boat. The government earlier stated there were 50 passengers, but civil society members claim the number was more than 200. Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi, who's on a visit to eastern DRC, declared a day of national mourning and promised to ensure that such accidents don't happen again. His party members have blamed the accident on the negligence of boat owners.
That tragedy was caused by the poor condition of the boat. The passengers were more than the boat's capacity. We've been informed that there were 150 of them. The boat owners clearly didn't ensure the safety of all those passengers.
The boat was carrying passengers and cargo towards the eastern trading hub of Goma. Boat accidents are common in the DRC. In 2010, 80 people died after a boat they were traveling in capsized on the Kasai River in the western province of Bandundu. Search and rescue operations are ongoing to find the passengers who are still missing. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
The Ethiopian Parliament, through the recommendation of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, has approved the appointments of new Foreign Affairs Minister and Defense Minister. The Parliament's lower house assigned Lema Megaresa as Minister of Defense and Degu Andargachu as Minister of Foreign Affairs. The government says these new assignments are part of the strategic positioning of leaders to sustain the current reform in the country. Former Ministers of Defense Aisha Mohammed has been reassigned as Minister of Urban Development and Construction.
The main thing we need in this country is repeating the robust change in regions to the federal government. Also to strengthen the government's performance to give proper answers to the public's demands. It is mandatory to strengthen the federal administration. We have to commit to the rule of law. And for that, the federal government must stand in necessary shape. That is where these key assignments were made.
Staying in Ethiopia, families of those who died on Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 held an Orthodox church prayer service marking the end of a traditional 40-day mourning period at the crash site. Family members wailed and held candle vigils as they bid their final goodbyes. They also paid tribute to victims of other nationalities by waving flags of their countries. Ethiopian Airlines crashed on March the 10th, killing all 157 people on board. A preliminary report released earlier this month indicated the pilots wrestled with a computer system that repeatedly ordered the nose down because of a faulty sensor data. No bodies have been recovered after the accident.
This community has suffered as much as we did. They were the first ones who rushed to the scene to save lives, but they couldn't. It was too late when they arrived. Therefore, since this community is even more traumatized than us, we would be very happy if some institution is established here to benefit the community and also serves as a memorial for the victims here.
Egyptians living abroad have started voting on constitutional amendments. If the referendum is approved, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi will be able to stay longer in office and gets additional powers over the judiciary. Opposition powers have rejected the amendments. However, it is not expected they can influence the vote. Here is Adel Al-Marki with more.
531 parliament members have approved the constitutional amendments, citing the importance of President el-Sisi to stay longer to complete his economic reform. With only 22 MPs rejecting and 1 abstaining, the opposition is almost voiceless. Still, they've encouraged their supporters to vote no. While the president's supporters argue the amendments hold massive reform, the opposition believes the reform could have been achieved otherwise.
I don't think these amendments are necessary, with the exception of the changes to the presidential term extension. I believe all the articles are designed to appeal to the people, so they would think it's not only about the president, while in fact all the other changes do not need to be a part of our constitutional change. I am definitely sad, and I believe that soon Egypt will be forced to correct these amendments.
While the parliament's majority coalition has swamped the streets with an outdoor campaign of support, the opposition voices could not be heard beyond social media. They are mobilizing their supporters to vote, yet it remains unlikely that they could sway the results of the referendum. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And to South Sudan now, where a UN delegation has visited the Equatoria state in a bid to end the ongoing violence between government and the opposition forces. Equatoria was set to be a converge point for troops allied to the government and those of opposition leader Riek Machar. But the fighting has delayed this. Here is Laura Wallambengo with more.
The shades of trees provide a rare chance for locals of Equatoria to talk peace. Peace that continues to be elusive since the signing of a peace deal in September 2018 between President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar. Government and opposition forces have been battling each other as usual.
We respected the peace and the order given by our leadership to go to our cantonments. We have gone to our cantonments, but up to date, we have nothing. The food supply and the rest of the non-food items are not there. So, what will show that there is peace?
Frustrated locals and their leaders are on the verge of giving up.
We are tired. We are tired. We are losing husbands. We are losing children. Where is the plight? Where is the future of our children? We need the answer today. We are tired. Our church leaders are all tired. For how long are we going to talk about peace? Leaders are supposed to lead us. They are our shepherds. And we are their flocks. Do they want to kill all of us? Do they want to kill all of us? Can they rule without us? We need the answer today.
The presence of a UN delegation led by the head of the United Nations mission in South Sudan, David Shearer, hoped to bring the violence to an end.
War is not the option. The peace we are talking about will not come from outside. It comes from inside and from you. And this is also why we are here, to help you to come to peace with one another.
That's the one area of the country where fighting still continues. But we're as the UN want to very much to push forward with as much as we can with our patrolling to give people the confidence that they need to start moving back. Yea River State was the breadbasket of South Sudan. So people work hard, they produce food not only for themselves but for the whole country. So having Yea River State normalised and people moving back and starting to farm again will be very useful.
Equatoria was designed as a cantonment area. Forces allied to the different sides of the conflict were meant to converge into a unified national army. But the peace that could have enabled the convergence exists in word, but not in deed. The peace brokers present promised to take the issues raised by locals to the country's leaders. Doubts on the formation of a unity government in South Sudan still linger, even as the May 12th deadline draws near. Laura Walubengo, CGTN.
The United Nations mission in South Sudan and the South Sudan's People's Defense Forces have partnered together to construct a child protection office. Authorities in the country say they are committed to ending the recruitment and the use of children in armed conflict. CGTN's Brian Toussaint has more on that story.
South Sudan has been working towards demobilizing all children currently within armed groups. The country wants to offer former child soldiers psychological help for their reintegration. This building that is being constructed will be the new Child Protection Office. It will be located within the headquarters of the South Sudan People's Defense Forces.
We want to put an end into use and recruitment of children. And also we want to put an end to occupation of schools, abduction of children, sexual violence against children, hindering of access. Or let me say, access are going to be free for humanitarians to go and deliver what they want to deliver. And we will be moving ahead together.
The UN mission in South Sudan wants to improve the lives of communities across this country. It has provided funds for the construction of the Child Protection Office.
Each stone here, I think, emphasizes the kind of unity that we are having with SSPDF. That each nail that goes here is a nail into the coffin of the death of issues of violation of children in South Sudan. This is how I look at it. And this is a very important structure for us. You can see those people carrying those heavy stones there. They are laying a foundation for the future protection of children in South Sudan. So it becomes part of the fabric.
In South Sudan, over 19,000 children have been recruited by armed groups in the past 5 years. Since the signing of a peace deal last year, there is renewed hope for an end to hostilities.
We'll have an officer here from the UN, from UNICEF and from UNMISS coming here to work to build the capacity of SSPDF to ensure that the issue of child protection is ingrained. It becomes part of the security forces of South Sudan.
Once this building is complete, it will be a step forward to better help protect the children in the country. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Zimbabwe is celebrating its 39th independence anniversary, with the country's leader, Emerson Mnangagwa, calling on retailers to lower prices and reiterating that the country will not go back on the land reform program.
The heavy downpour didn't dampen the celebrations, but served as a reminder of the deadly cyclone Idai. China was among the countries President Emerson Mnangagwa paid tribute to for stepping up to assist in the wake of the devastation. The climate has dealt Zimbabwe a double blow, with millions of people requiring food aid due to drought. There are also problems economically, especially after a recent hike in prices of basic commodities, including bread.
This conduct by stakeholders in business, in industry and commerce is inhuman, unethical, unpatriotic, and goes against the grain of economic dialogue which the Second Republic has espoused. Government remains determined to restore the purchasing power of all workers.
The president reiterated that there's no going back on the land reform.
Our constitution, however, bids us to compensation in respect to improvements effected on the land before acquisition. This will be done as and when resources are valuable.
Zimbabwe set aside $17 million in its 2019 budget, which will cover the interim payments due to start at the end of this month, and has appealed to former colonial master, the United Kingdom, to assist with the rest of the bill, estimated to exceed $1 billion. It's Zimbabwe's second independence anniversary since Mnangagwa took over, promising a turnaround in economic fortunes. But instead, the country currently finds itself sliding into recession, battling spiraling inflation, and still facing shortages of cash and other commodities.
Despite the driving rain which has been incessant throughout the ceremony, that independence flame behind me hasn't gone out. The sort of resilience that many here hope their nation can display amidst the current hardships.
Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Recently, Zimbabweans joined the Chinese community in the capital in a celebration of cultural diversity and the strengthening of bilateral ties between the two nations through the Sichuan Food Festival. The function was co-hosted by the Overseas Chinese Affairs Office of the State Council of China, the Chinese Embassy in Zimbabwe, and the Sichuan Provincial People's Government. The food festival is an initiative by the Chinese community which seeks to encourage the exploration of the business side of tourism for the nation's income generation. While the province of Sichuan is known for its cuisines, culture, and beautiful scenery, Zimbabwe is also known for its heritage sites, wildlife, and the majestic Victoria Falls. As relations between the two countries continue to flourish, China will this year roll out $30 million to support and assist Zimbabwe.
It's a first time for Zimbabwe to have this event which reflects the friendship between the people of Sichuan and Zimbabwe. Tonight we brought a feast of Chinese culture and art to friends from all walks of life in Zimbabwe, which could help more Zimbabwean friends have a deeper understanding of Sichuan's unique culture.
I'm happy to be here because I've been in Chengdu. I went there twice. I tasted the food. I had an opportunity to visit with my children. As young as they were, they enjoyed the food in Sichuan. It was really wonderful.
Like Zimbabwe, Sichuan province is a landlocked place with beautiful landscape and rich natural and human resources. I encourage Sichuan province to discover and explore Zimbabwe as both a tourist and investment destination. And I also hope our Zimbabwean friends could visit Sichuan in the future, and through Sichuan to get a better, real picture of China.
And the news continues on CGTN as we hand over to Uche Okoronkwa with the latest business news. Uche.
Thanks, Richard. And coming up on Africa Live Biz, rival tobacco manufacturers feud in South Africa over illegal cigarette trade. And Kenya's biggest lender, KCB, acquires state-owned National Bank through a share swap deal.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads, where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of the trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. Only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in South Africa, where a bitter feud is brewing between rival tobacco manufacturers in the country over the illicit cigarette trade. Now, the government is losing almost $600 million annually in unpaid taxes. Illicit trade refers to any pack of cigarettes which is sold below the minimum collectible tax set out by authorities. Now, in the latest development, the SPAR Group has removed several cigarette brands from its shelves, all of which belong to members of the Fair Trade Independent Tobacco Association. Here's Richard Nta reporting.
The SPAR Group has apparently removed some brands of cigarettes from its shelves with no explanation. The brands belong to members of FITA. SPAR declined to speak to CGTN. It's also not engaging with any of its stakeholders.
Goldleaf tried to engage the SPAR Group. They weren't interested in any form of meeting. We then tried to engage the SPAR Group, but we received no form of courtesy from them. It seemed they weren't interested in any form of meeting.
A 2018 Ipsos report commissioned by the Tobacco Institute of South Africa found that several brands were illicit purely because of price. The mandated taxes on a cigarette pack were not being charged. The RG brand, made by Goldleaf Tobacco Corporation, was identified as the top seller.
That same report also found that 3 brands belonging to the multinationals, Rothmans, Dunhill and Peter Stuyvesant, were also in the top 10 illicit brands. So we're a bit taken aback by the fact that SPAR, in essence, selectively chose our member brands and did not mete out the same sort of, sanction to the brands or organizations of the multinationals. And we feel, particularly where Goldleaf wasn't even given an opportunity to make representations or engage with the SPAR Group on this particular issue, it's unjust.
FITA has laid a complaint at the Competition Commission saying that some of its members are being targeted unfairly by the big multinationals. TISA also represents a number of tobacco companies, including global giants BAT and Philip Morris. FITA says it will no longer be bullied by the big multinationals.
If we allowed this to continue, we would then be caving into the pressure that the multinationals tend to place on, for instance, retailers and other stakeholders. So we, in essence, felt that it was time that we protect South African tobacco manufacturers against the constant abuse of dominance that the multinationals tend to enforce in the industry.
The Competition Commission is still determining whether the case has merit. A preliminary investigation is underway. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's head to Kenya now. The country's biggest lender by assets, KCB Group, has offered to buy 100% stake in National Bank of Kenya, and that's through a share swap deal. Now, one KCB share will be swapped for about 10 of National Bank's shares. That's according to a letter by KCB to National Bank. The offer, of course, marks the second major deal amongst lenders since Kenya capped commercial lending rates in 2016. Now, CBA Group, a privately held bank, is in the process of merging with NIC Bank in a deal announced late last year. The stock market had earlier in the day suspended trading in both KCB and National Bank shares in order to allow for the announcement to be made. Meanwhile, trade volume between Nigeria and China has expanded by about 10% in the last year, yielding more than $15 billion in value. Nigeria is amongst China's most important trading partners in Africa. Both countries are forecasting a significant rise in trade volumes in the coming years as various trade deals get concluded. Here's CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam with more.
An array of Chinese merchandise being exhibited in the capital, Abuja. They range from luxury furniture to building materials and heavy construction trucks. In total, the Chinese embassy says There are close to 200 registered Chinese businesses operating in Nigeria, and not all of them are in import trade. Some of them, like Green Agriculture West Africa, are involved in producing locally. The company has been involved in commercial farming in Nigeria since 2006. Over the years, it has set up several farms spanning thousands of hectares across Nigeria. They also advise government officials and outgrowers on best farming practices.
We have a farm in Kebbi State, which covers an area of 2,025 hectares. Then it's a major rice seeds farm. Apart from that, we also have 6 rice production bases in Niger State, Kebbi State, and Jigawa State. Besides, we also have a farm located here in Abuja, which covers an area of 77 hectares.
The exhibition is second of its kind, organized by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in Nigeria. It's a build-up to next week's Belt and Road Forum in China, where more than 100 countries and international organizations are expected. Nigeria will send a high-level delegation to the forum, and the reasons are obvious. The discussions surrounding the development of motorways, railways, airports and seaports are at the center of its government's strategic recovery and growth plan.
We have obtained enormous and spectacular accomplishments in infrastructure construction, investment, trade, and bilateral humanitarian aid. In terms of infrastructure projects, the Abuja-Kaduna Railway, Africa's first modern railway with Chinese technology and standards, has been delivered in 2016.
But not just that. China is involved in railway, roads, and airport infrastructure development projects across Nigeria. The Belt and Road Initiative promises more opportunities for both countries to deepen the existing cooperation for further growth and development. Kelechi Amekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And moving on now, a small company in Egypt has sparked controversy after its management decided to give an additional paid day off every month for women. Now, this day is dedicated to ease the physical pressure on female employees in the country during their first day of their menstrual cycle. Our correspondent Adel El-Maroui reports.
An initiative from an Egyptian magazine has inspired the founders of this digital marketing company. It was calling employers in the country to give women days off during their ministerial cycle.
I found that during that time, many women suffer. They feel pain and usually feel uncomfortable. Already many employees would take the first day off. All I did was simply to cancel the deduction from their leave, so it became a paid day off.
On her first ministerial day, an employee could report to the HR manager her day off. Confidentiality is well preserved, so she won't have to report to anyone else, nor is she obliged to provide medical proof. During urgent assignments, she can work at home.
It was awkward at first when this decision was made, but then we realized with great appreciation for our work, we used to be very tired. We had low power and had to come to work despite having little concentration. It became a relief now that we have the option to take the day off.
It had a huge impact on the work environment when you see the management cares about you. Employees feel that they are the priority, and that gets the job done with passion.
Despite such performance benefits, the company has sparked controversy in Egypt.
We've seen resistance and criticism against our decision. Some thought we're giving the whole week off for our women employees, and others feared that it would create a movement for women to call for the same day off. They claim girls would abuse it, but I have trust in my employees.
Employers here have become the first in Egypt to provide that privilege to female employees. Adel El-Maroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Well, that's all for now on Africa Live Biz. But coming up later on Global Business Africa, Zimbabwe is celebrating 39 years of independence as its economy struggles. We'll take a look at the gains and misses so far and the task ahead for President Emerson Mnangagwa. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Uche. The news continues here on CGTN Africa Live with so many remarkable and amazing stories, including this one. Softball brings hope to girls in notorious Cape Town neighborhood.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. In South Africa, a community sports project is helping young people in the township of Lavender Hill, an area in Cape Town with relatively high levels of crime, deal with difficulties of their everyday lives. Let's take a look at that story.
Lavender Hill is located in the infamous Cape Flats in South Africa. While most of the area is known for violence and drugs, some of its residents are determined to put their neighborhood on the map for something different: sports. Softball was started as an extracurricular activity in the local high school. It later grew in popularity and led to the formation of the Lavender Hill Softball Club in 2012.
I think if there wasn't softball in the area, we probably wouldn't have the kids today. Another achievement that the club have, we've just recently, 2 of the matriculants that matriculated, we got them into UWC.
This softball club is about more than just sports. The girls are mentored by their coaches, who also help them make critical decisions about their lives off the pitch.
Like last year and this year, we definitely became closer as a family on and off the field. And running onto the field with them today is very important because we're going to need to be with each other all the time. The strength has to be there, the momentum, everything.
Lavender Hills Super League side plays in a mixed league. This means the Lavender Hills 14 to 19-year-olds often play against women more than twice their age. Despite going down 4-2 against a mixed team called the Falcons, the Lavender Hills players and their fans still danced for joy.
After 2 seasons going from just entering some league and then going to the number 1 or the number 2 spot, and what makes them significant to me is the fact that they are 14 and they are 15 and 16. I think maybe the oldest person is probably 19 in this team. So to me, it's the best thing to witness because this is the future.
What inspiration they are. You know, we all know the circumstances of Lavender Hill. And to see these girls come out every week and they come and they give it their heart, they give it their all. They are such an inspiration for us all. And I have such high hopes for them and their future.
Funding acts as a major challenge to the team. Players are often expected to pay their way for tournaments abroad, an expense most people from Lavender Hill cannot afford. But with softball featuring in the 2020 Olympics, Lavender Hills players hope it won't be insufficient funds that will stop them from hitting home runs back in Lavender Hill and also on the world stage. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
Dubbing Chinese dramas into foreign languages to reach global audiences, it's a challenging but rewarding job for a group of African voice actors and actresses living in Beijing. Reporter Wang Mangzhen follows their story to find out what role they are playing in enhancing the cultural bonds between China and Africa under the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's take a look.
It's routine work for Happiness, a Tanzanian voice actress, dubbing Chinese dramas into Swahili. But back in her country, she was a famous on-camera celebrity.
I do acting for quite a little bit longer. Yeah, I started when I was a teenager. So I want to get different experience because I really like to learn new things like every day. Good thing there is another friend posted that in WhatsApp group. There is audition somewhere.
For her, it was a life-changing audition. Only 10 out of more than 2,000 were chosen, and she was one of them. But from stage to studio, it was not as easy as she thought.
At the beginning, it was a little bit hard. You can do things, dab maybe 5 minutes, and then you forget. Something came up. But at the end, I master all of those. I can even teach someone how to do it.
Happiness says now many of her fans enjoy watching Chinese dramas and can recognize her voice without seeing her face. The pay TV operator StarTimes is behind the huge project, dubbing popular Chinese movies and series into local languages. Now it's serving more than 20 million users in 30 African countries. Happiness is just one of the 21 African voice actresses and actors working at StarTimes, and since this dubbing center was established in 2011, more than 300 foreign staff have dubbed 11 languages here. Altogether, they've dubbed over 20,000 episodes for African viewers. Throughout the process, they're also learning more about Chinese culture.
Working with different cultures has really taught me a lot, because being an African outside your country, you need to embrace the other culture of another country, not only the culture, like everything, the food.
We have different ways of cooking. We use salt a lot. When you get here, we find something with no salt, sometimes with no sugar.
And the comparison goes well beyond food.
Like in here, you can find there are so many things men can do for women. In the street, we can find a man holding a handbag of a woman. In my country, never.
Proud to be a bridge between China and Africa, Happiness and her colleagues are now hoping to make their voices more widely heard across their continent. Wang Mengzhen, CGTN, Beijing.
And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Let's take a sneak peek at the headline. The Under-18 and Under-20 Africa Athletics Championship gets underway in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire.
Africa Live. Find your voice.